On the fog-shrouded Northern California coast, a grief-stricken historian was about to excavate more than ruins. What started as a 40-cent restoration project took a chilling turn when she came face to face with footprints that shouldn't exist. Children's laughter echoing through abandoned stone walls, and a warning carved deep into foundation rock: the sea remembers what we buried. Nora Vance wasn't your typical archaeological researcher. For 6 months since her sister's drowning, she had spent her life running from water's memory, known for her meticulous dedication to uncovering forgotten histories. She thought buying the abandoned chapel ruins would give her solitude. Instead, it gave her 27 voices demanding to be heard when she unearthed the sealed metal box containing a cryptic warning: "Don't unseal it." The children paid enough. She had no idea she was breaking open a century-old conspiracy. Nora's excavation revealed bound skeletons of children, survivors' confessions sealed in bottles, and the horrifying truth: after the Great Wave of 1899, terrified adults had murdered 27 orphans in a ritual meant to silence something they believed the tsunami had brought ashore. Her determination to expose this buried atrocity would lead to a supernatural reckoning, as the sea itself began responding to her discoveries, pushing evidence ashore and manifesting the children's restless spirits. What began as one woman's escape from personal tragedy would become a battle between silence and truth. The coastal community would never be the same after Nora Vance chose to honor murdered children over protecting the descendants of those who killed them, proving that some secrets the sea keeps aren't meant to stay buried, they're meant to be remembered. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Nora Vance thought she was buying solitude. The deed said the property had been abandoned since 1899. A chapel ruin on the Northern California coast, half swallowed by the sea, half buried in mud. 40 cents in a government auction. No other bidders. The clerk had looked at her like she was insane, but Nora wasn't looking for sanity. She was looking for silence. The kind of silence that comes from being somewhere no one else wants to be. Her sister had drowned 6 months ago. Boating accident off the Oregon coast. They never found the body. Just an empty kayak and a life vest tangled in kelp. Since then, Nora couldn't sleep without hearing water. Couldn't close her eyes without seeing waves, so she bought ruins. Stone and salt and absence. A place where she could restore something instead of watching everything wash away. The drive north took 11 hours. The road narrowed as she approached the coast, turning from asphalt to gravel to packed earth. Pine trees gave way to twisted cypress, their branches permanently bent by wind. Fog rolled in thick around mile marker 47 and didn't lift. When she finally reached the property, Nora sat in her truck for 10 full minutes, just staring. The chapel was smaller than she'd imagined. The photographs from the auction had been taken in summer sunlight, making the ruins look almost romantic, medieval, picturesque. In person, under October fog, it looked like a graveyard. The structure had no roof. 3 walls remained standing, built from dark grey stone that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The 4th wall had collapsed entirely, spilling rocks down toward the beach. What must have been the altar was now just a pile of rubble, overgrown with wild grass and blackberry vines. But it was the foundation that made Nora's breath catch. The base stones were massive, each one carved with deep grooves that looked deliberately placed. And on the largest foundation stone, facing the sea, someone had etched words into the rock. She climbed out of the truck, pulling her jacket tight against the wind. The carving was old but clear. Whoever had cut it into the stone had taken their time pressing deep. The sea remembers what we buried. Nora ran her fingers over the letters. The grooves were filled with dried salt and sand. She pulled out her phone to take a photograph, but the screen flickered and died. Battery had been full when she parked. She tried again. Nothing. A voice behind her made her spin around. "You must be the fool who bought this place." An elderly woman stood at the edge of the property. leaning on a walking stick made from driftwood. She wore a yellow rain slicker 3 sizes too big and rubber boots caked with mud. Her hair was white and wild, tied back with what looked like fishing line. "I'm Nora Vance," Nora said, trying to smile. "I'm the new owner." "Owner," the woman laughed, a sharp bark of sound. "You can't own something that belongs to the tide. Are you local?" "I'm June Harper, lighthouse keeper. Been watching this stretch of coast for 43 years. She gestured with her walking stick toward the ruins. "And I've watched 3 people try to reclaim this chapel. 2 gave up. 1 disappeared." Nora felt a chill that had nothing to do with the wind. "Disappeared?" "Went down to excavate the foundation. Never came back up." June's eyes were pale gray, almost colorless. "Coast Guard searched for 2 weeks. Found his tools. Found his tent. Never found him. When was this?" 1967. June took a step closer, studying Nora's face like she was reading a map. "You've got that look. The running from something look. Seen it before?" Nora crossed her arms. "I'm not running. I'm a historian. I restore historical sites." "Then you should know better." June pointed at the foundation stone. "See that carving? That's a warning, girl. Not decoration. A warning about what?" June's expression shifted. For just a moment, something like pity crossed her face. "About leaving what's sleeping. She turned and started walking back toward the cliff path, her walking stick tapping against the rocks. "Wait!" Nora called. "What do you mean?" June didn't turn around. "You'll find out soon enough. And when you do, you come find me. Lighthouse is a mile north. Can't miss it." She disappeared into the fog, leaving Nora alone with the ruins. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of salt and something else. Something organic and old. Nora walked the perimeter of the chapel, taking mental notes. The walls were structurally sound, considering their age. The foundation was intact. With enough work, she could stabilize the structure, maybe even rebuild part of the roof. She could make this into something. A research retreat. A place to think and work, and not hear the echo of her sister's voice, asking why Nora hadn't been there that day. As the sun began to set, Nora set up her tent on high ground, 50 yards from the ruins. She'd sleep here tonight, get a feel for the place. Tomorrow, she'd start cataloging what needed to be done. She made tea on her camp stove and watched the fog turn from gray to purple to black. The sea was loud here, constant, waves hitting rocks in a rhythm that almost sounded like breathing. At midnight, Nora heard something that made her sit up in her sleeping bag. Heart pounding, children's laughter, faint, distant, carried on the wind from somewhere near the chapel ruins. She unzipped her tent and stepped out into the cold. The fog had thickened until she could barely see 10 feet ahead. The laughter came again, light, playful, the sound of children playing at the beach, but there were no children. No houses for miles. No one but her and a strange lighthouse keeper who warned about sleeping things. Nora grabbed her flashlight and walked toward the ruins. The beam cut through the fog in a weak circle of light. The laughter had stopped. Now there was only the sea and the wind and the sound of her own footsteps on wet grass. She reached the foundation stone and stood there, listening. Nothing. Just as she turned to go back to her tent, she heard it again. Closer this time. Right behind her, a child's giggle. Clear as daylight, Nora spun around, her flashlight beam sweeping across empty air. "Hello?" Her voice sounded small against the vastness of the ocean. No answer. She stood there for 5 full minutes, barely breathing, waiting for the sound to return. It didn't, but when she finally walked back to her tent, she noticed something she hadn't seen before. Fresh footprints in the mud near the collapsed wall. Small ones, child-sized, leading from the ruins down toward the beach, then disappearing into the surf. Nora spent the first 3 days mapping the site. She measured walls, photographed every angle, sketched the layout in her field notebook. She tried to ignore the footprints, tried to tell herself it was runoff from the rain, natural erosion creating depressions that only looked like prints. But every morning, there were new ones. On the 4th day, she began excavating. She started at the northeast corner, where the foundation met the earth. The mud was thick and dark, saturated with decades of rain and seawater. She dug carefully, using a trowel and brush, treating the site like the archaeological treasure it was. 3 hours in, she found something. Her trowel hit metal. Not rock, not wood, metal. Nora's pulse quickened. She brushed away mud with trembling fingers, revealing the corner of a box. Rusted but intact, roughly the size of a shoebox. As she dug around it, she realized the box was sealed with some kind of wax or resin, protecting it from the elements. It took 20 minutes to free it from the mud. When she finally lifted it out, water dripped from the seams, but the seal held. She carried it to her work table, a piece of plywood balanced on 2 sawhorses, and set it down. Her hands were shaking. This was why she did this work. This moment, the discovery, the connection to people who had lived and died a century ago. She photographed the box from every angle, then carefully began working at the seal with a putty knife. It cracked, peeled away. The lid was corroded, but lifted with some effort. Inside was a collection of objects wrapped in oilcloths. Nora unwrapped each piece carefully, laying them out on the table. Children's trinkets, a wooden toy horse, its paint long faded, a tin whistle, a small leather shoe, child-sized, a string of glass beads, cloudy with age, 3 rusted nails, bent at odd angles, and at the bottom a glass jar. The jar was sealed with cork and wax. Inside, something paper-colored and folded. A note. Nora knew she should wait. Document everything. Create a proper catalogue. But her hands were already working at the seal, carefully removing the cork. The note inside was written on thick paper, remarkably preserved. The handwriting was careful, deliberate. Someone had taken time with these words. She unfolded it and read, November 3rd, 1899. We kept it beneath the tide. What the wave brought, we returned. What spoke in the dark, we silenced. This box marks the place. For God's sake, don't unseal it. The children paid enough. Let them rest. As if Nora read it 3 times. Her academic brain kicked in, analyzing. SF initials. The date was November 1899, just months after the great tsunami that had destroyed this coast. The tsunami that had buried this chapel, but what did they keep beneath the tide? What spoke in the dark? She turned the paper over. On the back was a drawing, crude but clear. Waves swallowing the sun, and beneath the waves, small figures with their mouths open. Screaming or singing, she couldn't tell. A child had drawn this. She was certain. You found something. Nora jumped, nearly dropping the note. A man stood at the edge of her work area, hands in his jacket pockets. He was tall, maybe 40, with dark hair and wire-rimmed glasses. He wore hiking boots and carried a field bag over his shoulder. Jesus Christ, Nora said, pressing a hand to her chest. You scared me. Sorry, I called out twice. You were focused. He gestured to the artifacts. Dr. Elias Marin. I teach oceanography at Humboldt State. Someone mentioned an archaeologist was poking around the old chapel ruins. Historian, Nora corrected. And I'm not poking around. I own this property. Right, the 40-cent auction. He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. I heard about that. June Harper mentioned it. You know June. Everyone knows June. She's been the unofficial guardian of this coast longer than most of us have been alive. He stepped closer, looking at the artifacts. May I? Nora hesitated, then nodded. Elias leaned over the table, studying the objects without touching them. Children's belongings, he said quietly. From the orphan refuge. There was an orphanage here? Refuge. After the tsunami hit in 1899, survivors set up a temporary shelter for displaced children. Operated for about 6 months. He picked up the glass jar carefully. May I read this? Nora handed him the note. She watched his face as he read. His expression shifted from curiosity to something harder to read. Concern, maybe. Or fear. You opened the jar, he said. It's my site. My find. The note says don't unseal it. The note is 125 years old. Whatever they were afraid of is long gone. But even as she said it, Nora remembered the footprints. The laughter in the fog. Elias handed back the note. My great-great-grandfather survived the Great Wave. Lived in this area his whole life after that. He never spoke about what happened here. None of the survivors did. Trauma, Nora said. It's common for disaster survivors to avoid. It wasn't trauma. It was guilt. Elias looked toward the sea. My family has lived on this coast for 4 generations. We don't talk about certain things. We don't ask certain questions. And we definitely don't dig into foundations that were deliberately buried. Nora felt heat rise in her chest. I'm a historian. Uncovering the past is literally what I do. Some pasts should stay buried. That's ridiculous. History belongs to everyone. Truth matters. Does it? Elias met her eyes. Or does it just make us feel better about ourselves? Like we're different. Like we wouldn't have done the same things. Before Nora could respond, a sound made them both turn. A deep rumble, low and constant, growing louder. The tide was coming in. But it was coming in fast. Too fast. Water rushed up the beach, flooding across the sand, reaching for the ruins. In seconds, the lower foundation was underwater. The waves kept coming, higher and higher, spilling into the excavation site. Nora grabbed the box of artifacts and ran for higher ground. Elias followed. They watched from beside her tent as the sea claimed the chapel, water swirling around the stone walls, flooding into gaps and cracks. That's not normal, Nora said. No, it's not. Elias checked his watch. High tide isn't for another 6 hours. They stood in silence, watching the water rise and fall. 15 minutes later, as suddenly as it had surged, the tide retreated. The ruins emerged from the water, streaming and dark. Locals call it the sea reclaiming her own, Elias said quietly. What happens every few years? Always near this site, Nora felt cold. What does that mean? It means you're not the first person to dig here. And every time someone does, the sea responds. As evening fell and Elias left with a final warning to be careful, Nora returned to the ruins. The flood had washed away layers of mud, exposing new sections of the foundation. She should have been excited. New areas to excavate, new discoveries. Instead, she felt watched. She walked the perimeter slowly, her boots squelching in wet earth. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and purple, beautiful and alien at once. That's when she saw them, footprints in the fresh mud. Small ones, leading from the ruins to her tent and back again. More than before, dozens of them crisscrossing the site like a trail map. But she had been standing right here, watching. No one had come near the tent. Nora knelt beside the nearest set of prints, definitely child-sized. The tread was smooth like bare feet or soft shoes. She touched one print carefully. The mud was still warm. The flood changed everything. When Nora returned at dawn, she found the ruins transformed. Water had carved away centuries of silt, revealing layers that would have taken her months to reach. The foundation was exposed in sections she hadn't even known existed. Stones shifted and settled, creating new gaps and openings. And in the northeast corner, where the altar had once stood, something gleamed white in the early light. Bone. Nora approached carefully, her camera ready. She documented everything, the position, the depth, the surrounding context. This was no longer just a restoration project. This was a legitimate archaeological find. The bones were human. She could see that immediately. Part of a rib cage, exposed where the flood had eaten away the mud. But there was something wrong about the position. The bones weren't just lying in the earth. They were arranged, deliberately placed. She brushed away more mud, and her breath caught. The skeleton was bound. Rope now petrified with salt and age, wound around the ribs, around where the wrists would have been. The body had been tied, restrained. Nora sat back on her heels, her mind racing. This wasn't a burial. This was something else. She kept digging, found more bones, then more. 3 skeletons in total, all bound the same way. All children, based on the size. Mixed in with the remains were fragments of stained glass, rosary beads, and strips of fabric stained dark with salt water and time. Her phone buzzed. 1 bar of signal. A text from an unknown number. Don't touch them. J.H. June Harper. Nora looked up at the cliff path. In the distance, she could see the lighthouse. June was watching. Had probably been watching since dawn. Nora texted back, too late. Already found them. The response came immediately. Then you need to know what you're dealing with.
Come to the lighthouse.
Bring nothing from the site. Nora hesitated. The archaeologist in her wanted to keep working, to document everything properly. But the human part, the part that had heard children laughing in the fog and seen impossible footprints, wanted answers. She covered the bones carefully with a tarp, weighted it down with rocks, and walked north along the cliff path. The lighthouse was old, built from the same dark stone as the chapel, standing alone on a promontory that jutted into the sea. The paint was peeling from the door, and the windows were filmed with salt spray. June was waiting on the porch, smoking a hand-rolled cigarette. "You found the children," she said. "Not a question, I found remains. Human remains. Bound with rope." June took a long drag, exhaled smoke into the wind. "Come inside. There's coffee, and things you need to see." The lighthouse interior was cluttered with decades of accumulated objects. Navigation charts covered the walls. Books were stacked in precarious towers. The smell of coffee mixed with salt air and old paper. June led her to a back room, a storage space with a single bare bulb hanging from the ceiling. In the center of the room sat an old steamer trunk, locked with a heavy padlock. "My mother gave this to me on her deathbed," June said. "Made me promise to keep it closed. Made me promise to keep people away from that chapel." "What's in it?" "The truth." June pulled a key from around her neck. "About Samuel and Lillian Frost, about what they did after the wave. The initials on the note, SF Samuel Frost. Reverend Samuel Frost. He and his wife ran the chapel. After the tsunami destroyed the town, they took in orphaned children. 27 of them." June unlocked the trunk. "But something came ashore with that wave. Something that spoke to the children." Nora felt cold. Spoke to them? In their dreams, in the dark. Lillian wrote about it in her journals. June lifted the lid. Inside were stacks of leather-bound books, loose papers, and a collection of objects wrapped in cloth. She wrote everything down. Every strange occurrence. Every night the children woke up chanting. Every morning they drew pictures of waves and darkness. June pulled out one of the journals and handed it to Nora. The cover was water-stained but intact. Inside, the handwriting was delicate, feminine, dated entries beginning in September 1899. Nora read the first entry, September 12th, 1899. "We have 27 children now. The town is gone. The sea took everything but gave back nightmares. Last night, little Sarah woke screaming about a voice beneath the hymn. She said it was singing. She said it wanted them to sing back." Nora turned pages. The entries grew darker, more frantic. "Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us." Now back to the story. September 19th, 1899. Samuel insists we perform nightly blessings. He says we must keep the children pure. But I hear what he doesn't say. He's afraid. We're all afraid. The children won't stop drawing. The same image every time. Waves with mouths. September 30th, 1899. Thomas tried to walk into the sea tonight. He was sleepwalking, he said. But his eyes were open. He was singing. That horrible song we keep hearing through the walls. What happened to the children? Nora asked quietly. June's expression was unreadable. Samuel believed the sea had brought a plague, a spiritual sickness. He thought if he didn't contain it, it would spread. So he and the surviving adults performed a ritual. What kind of ritual? The Covenant of Salt, an old maritime tradition, meant to bind evil spirits to the deep. June pulled out another object from the trunk, a hand-drawn map. They took the children to the chamber beneath the chapel, the salt crypt. They performed their blessing, and then they sealed it. Sealed what? Everything. The children, the voice, the truth. June's hands shook slightly as she held the map. They buried it all in mud and salt and guilt, and they made a pact never to speak of it again. Nora felt sick. They murdered them. They murdered children. They believed they were saving everyone else. Does that make it better or worse? June refolded the map. My mother was 12 when it happened, one of the only children who escaped. She spent her whole life guarding this coast, making sure no one disturbed what was buried. That's insane, is it? June gestured toward the window, toward the sea. You've heard them, haven't you? The laughter, the footprints, the tide that comes when it shouldn't. Something's down there, Nora. Maybe it's ghosts. Maybe it's guilt. Maybe it's just the echo of old horror. But it's real. Nora looked down at the journal in her hands, at Lillian Frost's careful handwriting, documenting a descent into collective madness. Or collective evil. I need to see everything, Nora said. All of it. The journals, the letters, the map. I need to document what happened here. Why? June asked. So you can write a paper, win an award, make a name for yourself, because those children deserve to have their story told. Whatever happened to them, they deserve to be remembered. June studied her for a long moment. Then she pulled out a stack of letters tied with string. These are from Lillian, written after they sealed the crypt. She wanted someone to know the truth. So she left these with my grandmother. Nora took the letters carefully. The paper was brittle with age. And this, June said, handing her a photograph, from the town archives. Before they removed all the records, the photograph showed a group of people standing in front of the chapel. 20 adults, maybe, all dressed in dark clothes, all staring at the camera with expressions that made Nora's skin crawl. Pride mixed with something darker. Satisfaction, maybe. She studied the faces. One man stood at the center, tall, with a severe face and eyes that seemed to bore through the camera. Samuel Frost, June said, pointing. And that's Lillian beside him. But Nora wasn't looking at the Frosts. She was looking at another face in the photograph, a younger man standing at the edge of the group. She'd seen that face before. In photographs at Elias's house, in newspaper clippings about local history. That's Elias's great-great-grandfather, she said quietly. June nodded. The Marins were survivors. They helped Samuel with the ritual. They helped seal the crypt. She paused. And they've been keeping the secret ever since. Nora drove straight to Elias's house. She didn't call ahead, didn't give him time to prepare excuses or denials. The photograph from June's trunk sat on the passenger seat, face up. Evidence. His house was a converted fisherman's cottage 2 miles inland. Weathered blue paint. A garden overgrown with native plants. She knocked hard enough to hurt her knuckles. Elias opened the door in a faded university sweatshirt, reading glasses pushed up on his forehead. His expression shifted when he saw her face. You know, Nora said. Not a question. Come inside. His living room was lined with bookshelves. Maritime history, oceanography, local genealogy. A stone fireplace dominated one wall. Above it hung a family portrait from the 1890s. Nora walked straight to it. Same faces as June's photograph. Different arrangement. But the man on the right, standing with his hand on a woman's shoulder, was unmistakable. Thomas Marin, Elias said quietly behind her. My great-great-grandfather. Survived the tsunami when he was 23. He helped murder children. He helped perform a ritual that survivors believed would save the remaining townspeople from a spreading madness. Elias's voice was careful, measured. There's a difference, is there? Nora turned on him. They tied up children and sealed them in a crypt. That's not a ritual. That's mass murder. You don't understand what happened after the wave. The chaos, the fear. People watched their entire world wash away in minutes. Then the children started acting strange, speaking in unison, drawing the same images, walking toward the sea in the middle of the night. He sat down heavily. My great-great-grandfather kept journals. I've read them. He was terrified. They all were, so they killed children because they were scared. They thought the wave had brought something with it. A contagion, a curse, something that needed to be contained before it spread. Elias met her eyes. I'm not defending what they did. I'm explaining why I didn't want you digging there. Nora pulled out her phone, showed him photographs of the bound skeletons. This is what your family helped do. This is what they've been hiding for 125 years. Elias stared at the images. His face went pale. I've never seen proof before. Just stories, family legends that no one talks about. Well, now you have proof. And I'm going to document everything. The bodies, the journals, the truth about what happened here. If you do that, you destroy my family's name. You destroy a dozen other families. The survivors' descendants still live in this area. They built their lives on the silence. Then maybe their lives deserve to be destroyed. Nora's voice was cold. Those children didn't get to build anything. They got bound with rope and buried alive. Elias was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood. You're right. You're absolutely right. And I'll help you. But we need to do this properly. We need to find the official records. Prove exactly what happened and who was involved. June said the records were removed. Pages cut out of the town registry. Then we look somewhere else. The county archives, church records, shipping logs, anything that documents who was here and what they did. He grabbed his jacket. I know the head archivist at the County Historical Society. She owes me a favor. They drove to Eureka in Elias's truck. The county archives occupied the basement of an old courthouse. Dim fluorescent lights, the smell of old paper and mildew, rows of filing cabinets and bound volumes stretching into shadow. The archivist, a woman named Margaret with silver hair and reading glasses on a chain, greeted Elias with genuine warmth. Then she saw Nora's expression and her smile faded. What are you looking for? She asked. Records from the 1899 tsunami, specifically anything about the chapel refuge and the children housed there, Elias said. Margaret's expression shifted. Closed off! Those records are restricted. Restricted how? By request of the Historical Society Board. Family privacy concerns. The families are all dead, Nora said. Their descendants aren't, and they have a legal right to control access to sensitive family materials. Margaret's tone was firm but not unkind. I'm sorry. I can't help you. Can't or won't. Nora pressed. Both. Margaret looked between them. Elias, you of all people, should understand why we protect certain histories. Some things cause more harm than good when exposed. They left empty-handed. Stood in the parking lot while rain began to fall. Light at first, then heavier. There has to be another way, Nora said. The church records. The chapel was affiliated with a missionary society. They kept separate documentation. Elias checked his phone. But those would be housed at the diocese archives. In Sacramento. That's a 6-hour drive. Before Nora could respond, her phone rang. June's number. Get back here. June's voice was urgent. Now, something's happening at the ruins. They made the drive back in 40 minutes. Too fast for the narrow coastal roads. When they reached the chapel site, the beach was chaos. Debris everywhere, driftwood, kelp, fragments of wood that looked too worked to be natural. And scattered among it all objects that made Nora's chest tighten, children's shoes. Dozens of them, worn leather, rotted with age, salt-crusted and dark. They dotted the sand like grave markers, an old bell, green with verdigris, the kind that would have hung in a chapel tower, and bottles, glass bottles sealed with wax, half buried in fresh deposited sand. June stood at the edge of the debris field, her yellow slicker streaming with rain. The sea pushed it all up an hour ago, she said when they reached her. Tide came in wrong again. Brought all this with it. Elias knelt beside one of the bottles, carefully worked it free from the sand. The seal was intact. Through the green glass, Nora could see paper inside. Don't, June said. Elias broke the seal anyway. Pulled out a folded note, paper miraculously dry. He read it aloud. Forgive us. We buried what spoke. We silenced what sang. God forgive us. We buried our children to save ourselves. The sea knows. The sea remembers. And we can never forget. No signature. Just that confession, written in a shaking hand. Nora picked up one of the shoes, child-sized for a girl, maybe 7 or 8. The leather was soft, expensive once. A shoe someone's parents had saved money to buy. How many bottles are there? She asked. June pointed down the beach. I counted 17 before you got here. All the same. Different handwriting. Different confessions. The survivors, Elias said quietly. They each wrote one. Each buried their guilt. And now the sea's giving it back. June's voice was grim. Because you opened what was sealed. You dug where you shouldn't have dug, Nora wanted to argue. Wanted to say this was natural, erosion, coincidence. But she was standing in a field of children's shoes that shouldn't exist, holding confessions written by murderers a century ago. watching the sea behave in ways that defied every natural law. Thunder rolled in the distance. The storm was getting worse. "We need to find the crypt," Nora said. "We need to document what's down there before this gets any worse." "It won't get better if you keep digging," June said. "It'll get worse. The more you expose, the more the sea responds." "Good." Nora's voice was hard. "Let it respond. Let it drag every secret into the light. Those children deserve that much." She walked back to her truck, grabbed her excavation tools. The rain was coming down in sheets now. Lightning split the sky over the ocean. Elias caught up with her at the ruins. "Are you sure about this?" "No, but I'm doing it anyway." They worked as the storm built around them, digging where June's map indicated the crypt entrance should be, directly beneath where the altar had stood. The mud was thick and cold. The rain made everything slippery. 2 hours in, Nora's shovel hit stone. Not foundation stone. Something else, carved, deliberate. They cleared away mud to reveal a stone panel, 3 feet by 4 feet, covered in symbols that Nora didn't recognize. Maritime symbols, maybe, or something older. In the center was an inscription, "Covenant of Salt, 1899. What sleeps below must sleep forever." "This is it," Elias breathed. Lightning flashed. Thunder followed immediately. The storm was directly overhead now. June appeared beside them, rain streaming off her slicker. "If you open this, there's no going back. You understand that?" Nora looked at her, at Elias, at the stone panel that marked the tomb of murdered children. "I understand." She wedged her crowbar into the seam. Elias grabbed the other side. Together they pried. The stone moved, ground against itself with a sound like screaming, lifted, shifted. Beneath was darkness. A hole leading down into the earth? And from that darkness came a sound that made all 3 of them step back, humming, low and constant. Not mechanical, not natural. Something in between. The sound of the sea trapped underground, or something else breathing in the dark. Nora stood at the edge of the opening, shining her flashlight into the darkness. The beam caught on stone walls, slick with moisture. Carved steps leading down. The humming continued, rhythmic, almost musical. "We need proper equipment," Elias said. "Ropes, lights, safety gear." "Tomorrow," Nora agreed. Her hands were shaking. From cold or adrenaline, she couldn't tell. They replaced the stone panel, weighted it down with rocks, stood there in the rain, staring at what they'd uncovered. "Come back to the lighthouse," June said. "All of you. The storm's getting worse. You can't stay here tonight." The lighthouse was warm, dry. June made coffee laced with whiskey and didn't ask if they wanted it. Just handed out mugs and sat them down in her cluttered living room. "I have more," she said finally. "More than I showed you this morning. Things my mother made me promise never to show anyone." She disappeared into the back room. Came back carrying a smaller chest, wooden with brass fittings, locked with a combination lock. "My mother's inheritance," June said. "From her mother, who got it from Lillian Frost herself." She opened it. Inside were letters, dozens of them, all in the same careful handwriting Nora had seen in the journal. "Lillian kept writing after they sealed the crypt," June said. "For years. Letters she never sent. Letters she hid away because she couldn't live with the silence." Nora took the first letter. "Dated November 15th, 1899. I can't sleep. I close my eyes and see their faces. 27 children. We told them it was a blessing. We told them they were being saved. But Sarah knew. She looked at me before we closed the door and she knew. She was 9 years old and she understood we were killing her. God forgive me. God forgive us all." The next letter was dated a week later. "Samuel says the ritual worked. The madness has stopped spreading. The remaining survivors are recovering. He says we did what was necessary. But I hear them at night, down beneath the chapel, singing that horrible song. Samuel says it's my guilt, my imagination. But I hear them, letter after letter, Lillian's descent into guilt and grief and something worse. Something that might have been madness or might have been truth. The last letter was dated March 1900. "I'm leaving. I can't stay here anymore. I can't stand on ground that holds what we did. But before I go, I'm drawing a map. I'm recording everything. Where the crypt is, what we put inside it, how to open it if someone must. Because someday, someone will need to know. Someone will need to set them free. I pray it's someone braver than I was. Tucked in with the letters was a folded piece of parchment. Nora opened it carefully. A detailed drawing. The chapel. The foundation. And beneath it a cross-section showing underground chambers. The salt crypt was bigger than Nora had imagined. Multiple rooms, corridors, all lined with salt bricks. And in the center chamber, symbols drawn around a circular space. What is this? Nora asked, pointing to the center. The binding circle, June said quietly, where they performed the actual ritual. Samuel believed if they sanctified the space with salt and prayer, they could trap whatever was speaking to the children. And did it work? Depends on who you ask. The survivors lived. The madness stopped. The town eventually rebuilt. But people left. Families moved away. Within 10 years, most of the survivors were dead. Accidents, illness, suicide. June's voice was flat. My grandmother used to say, the sea takes its payment eventually. Elias studied the map. This shows multiple entrances. The main one we found beneath the altar. But there's another here, leading out toward the sea. A drainage tunnel, June said, in case of flooding. But they sealed it with stones and salt. It shouldn't be accessible. Nora felt cold. When the sea pushed all that debris up today, when the tide came in wrong, it was coming from that direction. From where the tunnel would be, they looked at each other. The implication was clear. The tunnel's been breached, Elias said. The sea's getting into the crypt. Thunder shook the lighthouse. The lights flickered. Outside, the storm raged. Nora spent that night in June's spare room, small, cluttered with maritime equipment and old photographs. She lay in the narrow bed, listening to the storm and the sea and the creaking of the old building. She dreamed. In the dream, she was standing in the chapel. But it was whole, complete, roof intact, candles burning. The air smelled of salt and wax and something organic, something old. Children stood in rows, 27 of them, different ages, all dressed in simple clothes, all staring at her with expressions she couldn't read. One girl stepped forward. Maybe 9, dark hair, serious eyes. You opened it, the girl said. Her voice was layered, multiple voices speaking as one. I'm sorry, Nora heard herself say. I didn't know. You did know. You just didn't care. You wanted the truth more than you wanted us to rest. I want to help you. I want to tell your story. The girl smiled, sad, ancient. Our story is the sea and the mud and the dark. That's all that's left of us. The other children began to sing. That song Lillian had written about. Low and haunting and wrong. It vibrated in Nora's bones. Made her teeth ache. We're coming back, the girl said. Because you let us. Because you opened what was sealed. And we're hungry, so hungry. For light and air and voices that aren't echoes. Nora woke gasping. Her heart pounded. The room was dark except for the faint glow of her phone. 3 a.m, she got up, walked to the window. The storm had passed. The sea was calm, too calm, like glass under moonlight, and in that glass she saw movement. Small figures, walking beneath the surface. Walking toward shore, she pressed her face to the glass, counted them. 27 shapes in the water, getting closer. Then her phone rang, shrill in the silence. A number she didn't recognize. She answered static, then a voice, a child's voice. Why did you leave us down there? We've been waiting so long. Nora's blood turned to ice. Who is this? You know who we are. You dug us up. Now we're digging ourselves out. The line went dead. Nora ran to wake June and Elias, but when she burst into the living room, they were already awake. Standing at the window, staring out at the beach was covered with footprints. Hundreds of them. Small ones, leading from the sea toward the ruins. They're here, June whispered. Dawn came grey and cold. The 3 of them stood on the beach, following the trail of footprints. They led straight to the chapel ruins, to the stone panel, which now sat pushed aside. Moved from within, the opening gaped, dark, waiting. This is impossible, Elias said, but his voice shook. Nora grabbed her equipment from her truck, flashlights, rope, her camera. I'm going down. Not alone, Elias said. They descended together. The carved steps were slick with moisture and moss. The humming grew louder as they went deeper. The sound surrounded them, vibrated through the stone. The steps ended in a corridor, narrow, low ceiling. The walls were lined with bricks, not regular bricks. These were white, crystalline, salt, Elias said, touching one. The walls are made of compressed salt. They walked forward. Nora's flashlight beam caught symbols carved into the salt. Maritime symbols, religious crosses, and others she didn't recognize. Geometric patterns that hurt to look at too long. The corridor opened into a larger chamber, circular, 20 feet across. And everywhere bones, small skeletons arranged in a circle, each one sitting upright. Each one holding something in their lap. Stones, smooth stones from the beach, carved with symbols. Jesus, Elias breathed. Nora forced herself to document, to take photographs, to treat this like an archaeological site instead of a tomb. But her hands shook, her vision blurred with tears. These were children, real children, who had been brought down here and arranged like pieces in a ritual, who had died alone in the dark, believing they were being saved. In the center of the circle was an empty space, a depression in the stone floor. Something had been there. Something was gone now. Elias found a metal box tucked against the wall, rusted but sealed. He opened it carefully. Inside was a letter, the final letter. Nora read it aloud, her voice breaking. To whoever finds this, Samuel believed the sea took voices, not lives. He believed if we could contain the voice, the song that drove the children mad, we could save everyone else. So we brought them here. We made them hold stones carved with binding prayers. We sealed them in salt, and we waited for them to stop singing. It took 3 days. 3 days of hearing them down here, crying, begging, singing that horrible song, until finally silence. Samuel said we did God's work, but God doesn't ask for the blood of children. We murdered them, all of us, every survivor who helped, and we can never undo it. All we can do is hide it, bury it, hope the sea forgives what we cannot forgive ourselves. Lillian Frost, November 1899. Nora set down the letter, touched the nearest wall. The salt felt warm, alive somehow. And then she felt it, the vibration, like a heartbeat in the stone. The walls are humming, she said. Elias pressed his hand to the salt. It's resonating, like the whole structure is a tuning fork. For what? Before he could answer, Nora saw something that made her stop breathing. There, on the ground near one of the skeletons, glinting in the flashlight beam, a small object, silver, tarnished but recognizable, a locket. Nora picked it up with shaking hands, opened it. Inside was a tiny photograph. 2 girls, sisters, smiling at the camera. It was her locket, the one she'd lost the day her sister drowned, the one that had fallen into the ocean off the Oregon coast 6 months ago. 500 miles from here. That's impossible, she whispered. What is it? Elias asked. She showed him. He stared at the photograph, at the locket, at her face. This was yours. I lost it in the ocean, months ago, hundreds of miles north. Nora's voice was hollow. How is it here? The humming grew louder. The walls pulsed. And from somewhere deeper in the crypt, they heard a sound that made them both turn. Water, rushing water. Getting closer, the tunnel, Elias said. The seas flooding in, they ran, back through the corridor, toward the steps. Water followed, cold, dark, rising fast. They climbed. Nora's lungs burned. Her legs screamed. Behind them, the water churned and crashed. They burst out into daylight, collapsed on the mud beside the opening. Water poured out after them. Dark water that smelled of salt and rot and something worse. And mixed in with the water flowing out onto the ground were the bones, the children's bones. Washing up from below, freed from their circle, released from their binding, June was waiting for them, standing with her walking stick, her expression grim. It's happening, she said. What my mother warned about, what Lillian feared. You didn't just open the crypt. You broke the binding. What does that mean? Nora gasped. June looked toward the sea. It means whatever they trapped down there isn't trapped anymore. And it's coming back. The storm hit at dusk. Not a normal storm. This one came from nowhere. Clear skies to howling wind in minutes. Rain like needles. lightning that struck the same spot on the beach over and over. They retreated to the lighthouse, the safest structure on the coast, built to withstand anything the sea could throw at it. They locked the door, boarded the lower windows, waited. The wind screamed around the building. The lighthouse shook, but it held. Nora sat on the floor with June's radio in her hands, dead. The batteries were new, but it wouldn't turn on. Her phone was the same. No power, no signal. They were cut off. "Tell me the truth," she said to Elias. "All of it. Everything your family knows." Elias sat with his back against the wall, his face drawn, exhausted. After the wave, people were drowning on dry land, choking on air, like the water had gotten inside them and wouldn't leave. My great-great-grandfather wrote about it. Children walking into the sea in the middle of the night. Adults hearing songs in their sleep, songs in languages no one knew. Samuel Frost called it possession, June added, but Lillian called it something else. She said the wave had carried voices, ancient voices, things that lived in the deep places where light doesn't reach. And the ritual, Nora asked, what did they actually do? Elias closed his eyes. They brought the children into the crypt, drugged them with laudanum so they'd be calm, arranged them in a circle, put stones in their hands, carved with prayers and binding symbols. Then they sealed them in, living. Dear God, they believed the voices needed human hosts, that the children were already contaminated, that by sealing them with salt, a traditional protector against evil, they could trap the voices before they spread. His voice broke. They listened for 3 days, heard the children crying, begging, and then silence. And my great-great-grandfather wrote that when the silence came, they knew it had worked. The madness stopped spreading. The survivors recovered because they'd committed murder, Nora said. They'd crossed a line so terrible that it shocked them back to sanity. Maybe, or maybe they really did trap something down there. Something that's been waiting for someone to let it out. Thunder shook the building. The lights flickered and died. June lit oil lamps. The golden light threw shadows that moved wrong. Too fluid, too alive. From outside came a new sound, low, droning, a note that vibrated through the floor, through their bones. Growing louder. Do you hear that? Elias whispered. They all heard it. A chord, multiple tones harmonizing, rising from the sea, or rising from beneath the lighthouse, or rising from everywhere at once. The song, June said. The one Lillian wrote about. The one the children sang. Nora went to the window, looked out through the gap in the boards. The sea was still, glass smooth despite the storm, and beneath the surface shapes moved. Hundreds of them, small, pale, swimming in formation, creating patterns. There are things in the water, she said. Elias joined her, stared. Those aren't fish. The shapes rose, broke the surface, and Nora saw them clearly. Children, or what had been children, pale, translucent, their eyes empty, their mouths open, all singing that terrible chord. They're not real, Elias said. But he didn't sound convinced. They're real enough, June said. Real as memory, real as guilt, real as the children your ancestors murdered. The shapes moved toward shore, toward the lighthouse. The song grew louder. The building shook, not from wind, from resonance. The whole structure vibrating like a struck bell. We have to stop this, Nora said. How? Elias demanded. How do you stop ghosts? How do you stop a century of guilt made manifest? By finishing what Lillian started. By telling the truth. By giving them what they want. Nora pulled out her camera, started checking the batteries. Dead. Everything was dead. We document, we record, we make sure their story doesn't stay buried. And if that's not what they want? June asked. If they just want revenge? Before anyone could answer, the door shook. Something was outside, pounding. The wood creaked. The lock strained. Then silence. Nora opened the door. Nothing there, just wind and rain and darkness. She stepped onto the porch, looked toward the ruins, and saw it. The chapel was glowing, not with fire, with light, called light blue-green, the same color as bioluminescent algae. It poured from the opening to the crypt, spilled out onto the ground, rose into the air like mist, and in that light she saw them. 27 children, standing in the ruins, looking at her, waiting. "They want us to go back," she said. "That's insane," Elias said. "Everything about this is insane. But they've been waiting for someone to find them, to know them, to remember them." Nora looked at him. "Your family helped put them there. My obsession helped let them out. Now we have to face them." June grabbed Nora's arm. "If you go back there, you might not come back. You understand that?" "I understand." Nora looked at the ruins, at the light, at the waiting figures. "But I'm going anyway, because they deserve witnesses. They deserved better than they got." She walked down the cliff path, toward the glowing ruins, toward the children who were and weren't. Elias followed. She heard his footsteps behind her, steady, determined. When they reached the ruins, the children turned as one. Their faces were wrong, too smooth, too blank, like memories of faces rather than faces themselves. The girl from Nora's dream stepped forward. Sarah, the one who'd known. "You came back," she said. Multiple voices, layered, echoing. "I came back," Nora agreed. "Are you ready to listen?" "Yes, then come down. Come see what we've been singing about. Come see what's been sleeping beneath the salt. What woke up when you opened the door?" Sarah turned and walked toward the opening. The other children followed. And their forms shifted, changed, became less childlike, more fluid, more alien. Nora looked at Elias. "Last chance to run. I'm not running. Not from this, not from what my family did." He took her hand. "We go together." They descended into the crypt, into the light, into the song that had been waiting 125 years to be heard. And the sea, vast and patient and unforgiving, rose to meet them. The crypt had changed. The walls glowed with bioluminescent algae. Blue-green light pulsed in rhythms that matched a heartbeat, or breathing. The salt bricks had cracked. Water seeped through. The bones were gone, washed away by the flood. Only the circle remained. Empty now, waiting. Sarah stood at the center. The other children arranged themselves around the chamber's edge, watching. Their forms flickered. Solid one moment, translucent the next. Like projections, like memories given shape by guilt and salt water. "We've been singing for so long," Sarah said. Her voice echoed off the walls. "Singing the story, singing the truth." But no one could hear us. The salt blocked it. The binding held. "Until you opened the door." "I'm listening now," Nora said. Her voice was steady, but her heart hammered against her ribs. Tell me everything." Sarah gestured to the walls. The algae shifted, formed patterns, images. Nora saw them like memories projected onto living canvas. The tsunami, a wall of water taller than buildings, sweeping through the town, drowning everything. When it receded, it left destruction. And something else. The wave brought voices from the deep, Sarah said. Old voices, songs that existed before humans had words. They got into the water, into us, when we drank, when we breathed the mist. They nested in our lungs like parasites. The images showed children at night, walking, sleepwalking, down to the shore, standing in the surf, mouths open, singing. Samuel Frost heard us singing one night. He thought we were possessed. Thought demons had entered us through the water. Sarah's expression was sad, ancient. But we weren't possessed. We were translating. The voices needed human throats to be heard. They wanted to sing their way back home, back to the sea. Elias said quietly behind Nora. Yes, but Samuel thought if he silenced us, he'd silence the voices. So he brought us here, fed us medicine that made us sleepy, put stones in our hands and told us to pray. Sarah's form flickered. We knew what was happening. We weren't mad. We weren't demons. We were just children who'd survived a tsunami and inherited something ancient. The walls showed the final night. The door closing, darkness, children crying, singing, the song changing, becoming desperate, becoming a prayer of their own. Help us, remember us. Don't forget, it took 3 days for us to die, Sarah said. Her voice was matter-of-fact, empty, thirst mostly, the cold, the dark. And all that time, the voices sang through us, using our last breaths, trying to get free. When we finally stopped, Samuel thought he'd won. But the voices don't die. They just wait. In the salt, in the stones, in the water. always waiting for someone to open the door. Nora felt tears on her face. I'm so sorry. God, I'm so sorry. We don't want sorry. Sarah moved closer. Her face rippled like water. We want to be remembered. We want our names spoken. We want the truth told. Samuel and his survivors buried us with lies, told everyone we died in the tsunami, gave us false graves. Let our families mourn the wrong deaths. I'll tell everyone, Nora said.
I'll write it all down.
I'll make sure the world knows what happened here. Sarah smiled, sad, knowing. Will you, or will you do what everyone does? Tell yourself it's history. It's done. It's too painful to expose. The survivors' families still live here. Their descendants, your new friend's family. Will you destroy them to honor us? Nora looked at Elias. His face was pale, stricken. Yes, Nora said. Yes, I will. Because the truth matters more than comfort. Then we have a gift for you. Sarah held out her hand. In her palm appeared an object, solid, real, Nora's locket. You want to know how this got here? How something you lost in Oregon washed up in our crypt? Yes, because the sea remembers everything. Every object ever lost to it. Every person ever drowned. Every secret ever buried in salt water. And sometimes, when the currents align, when someone opens a door between the deep and the shore, the sea gives back what it took. Sarah pressed the locket into Nora's hand. It's giving you back a chance. A choice. We can show you your sister. The voice beneath can speak with her voice. You can hear her one last time. All you have to do is stay silent about what you found here. Nora's hand closed around the locket. It was cold, wet, real. You're offering me my sister for your silence. We're offering you peace. Real peace. Not the peace of knowing. The peace of hearing her voice again. The chamber shifted. The walls pulsed. And from the darkness beyond the circle, Nora heard it. Her sister's voice, calling her name. Nora? Nora, where are you? I'm so cold. Why did you leave me? Nora's legs nearly gave out. Elias grabbed her arm, held her up. That's not real, he said. That's manipulation. That's guilt wearing your sister's voice. But what if it is real? Nora whispered. What if she's down there somewhere? What if the sea really does keep everything? Then she wouldn't want this. She wouldn't want you to choose her over the truth, over children who were murdered. Elias's voice was firm, strong. You know that. You know her. Would she want you to bury this? Nora closed her eyes, heard her sister's voice getting closer, begging, pleading, so real, so achingly familiar. But Elias was right. Her sister had been brave, had been honest, had always chosen truth over comfort. No, Nora said. She wouldn't. She opened her eyes. Looked at Sarah. I won't be silent. I won't trade your memory for mine. You deserve better than that. You all do. The chamber shook. The voice, her sister's voice, changed. Became angry. Became something else. A roar of water and wind and ancient hunger. Then you've chosen, Sarah said. But she was smiling, relieved. You've passed the test. The voice beneath wanted to see if you'd trade truth for comfort. If you'd repeat what Samuel did. Choose personal peace over collective memory. What is the voice beneath? Nora asked. Really? It's what happens when suffering gets trapped, when truth gets buried, when guilt ferments in salt and darkness for 100 years. Sarah's form began to fade. It's not supernatural. It's just human. All that pain pressed into the foundations, waiting to be acknowledged, to be released. The other children began to fade too, dissolving like mist. Their song changed, became softer, sweeter, less desperate. We can rest now, Sarah said. Someone finally listened. Someone finally chose us. That's all we needed. Witnesses, memory, truth. Wait, Nora said. The coral heart. The humming. What is that? Sarah looked back one last time. That's the voice beneath at rest. It's not evil. It's just grief. It hums because it remembers. Keep it. Let it remind you that some things shouldn't stay buried. And Nora, your sister isn't lost. She's just changed, like we changed. The sea doesn't take, it transforms. Remember that? Then she was gone. All of them were gone. The light faded. The walls stopped pulsing. The chamber was just a chamber again. Stone and salt and silence. Elias caught Nora as she collapsed. Are you okay? I don't know. I don't know what just happened. What any of this was. Does it matter? Real or hallucination? Ghosts or guilt? You made the right choice. Above them, they heard rushing water. The tunnel. The sea cave. Water was flooding in. Fast. We need to get out, Elias said. Now. They ran for the stairs. The water hit like a physical force. Cold. Black. Churning with debris. Nora grabbed the rope they'd left hanging. Started climbing. Elias behind her. The water rose. Faster than natural. Faster than possible. They reached the corridor. It was already flooding. Knee-deep, then waist-deep. The current pulled at them. Tried to drag them back down. Keep moving. Elias shouted. They waded. Fought the current. The water was full of things. Bones, salt bricks. Fragments of the crypt dissolving in the flood. Nora's lungs burned. Her legs screamed. But she kept moving. The stairs. Finally, she grabbed the railing. Pulled herself up. 1 step, 2, 3. Behind her, Elias made a sound. Choked. Pained. She turned. He'd fallen. The current had him. Was dragging him back toward the chamber. Elias. He grabbed the railing. Held on, but barely. The water was too strong. Too violent. And the ceiling was cracking. The salt bricks were failing. The whole structure was collapsing. Go, he shouted. Get out! Not without you! Nora, listen to me. Someone has to hold this passage long enough for the truth to get out. Someone from my family. Someone who carries the guilt. His face was calm, resolved. This is how I make it right. How we make it right. No, I won't let you do this. You don't have a choice, he smiled. Sad, peaceful. Tell them. Tell everyone. Don't let us bury this like our grandparents did. Promise me, the ceiling groaned. Chunks of salt fell. The water surged higher. I promise, Nora said. Tears mixed with salt water. I promise. Then go, run. She ran, climbed. The stairs crumbled behind her. The water roared. She heard Elias below. Heard him chanting. The same words from Lillian's letters. The covenant of salt, but different, changed. He was speaking the names. All 27 children. Saying them aloud. Bearing witness, Nora burst out of the opening. Into rain and wind and darkness. Behind her the ground collapsed. The entrance caved in. Water geysered up, then settled, then went still. She stood there, soaking, shaking, alone. June appeared, walking down from the lighthouse. She looked at Nora's face. At the collapsed entrance, she understood without asking. He stayed. June knelt at the edge of the collapse, whispered something. A prayer, maybe, or a goodbye. Then she stood. Help Nora up. Come on, child. Storm's not done yet, but June was wrong. As they walked back to the lighthouse, the storm broke. The wind died. The rain stopped. The clouds parted, and moonlight spilled across the beach, silver, clean, new. The sea was calm, perfectly calm, like glass. And in that glass, Nora saw her reflection, saw June beside her, saw the ruins behind them. And for just a moment she saw other reflections. 27 children standing on the shore, watching, smiling, at peace. Then they faded. Gone into moonlight and memory. It's done, June said quietly. They're free. Nora collapsed on the beach. Clutched her locket. Clutched the coral heart she'd somehow carried through everything. It was warm in her hand, pulsing faintly, like a second heartbeat, like proof that everything had been real. The sea remembers, she whispered. And now so do we. 6 weeks later, Nora stood in a county courthouse, surrounded by lawyers, descendants of survivors, historical society board members, all arguing about what to do with the site, with her discovery, with the truth. The bones had been recovered, DNA tested, matched to families who'd thought their children had died in the tsunami. 27 families who learned their ancestors had lied, had murdered, had buried the truth in salt and silence. Some wanted the site destroyed, wanted the bones buried properly and the story sealed, wanted to protect their family names. Others wanted justice, wanted a memorial, wanted the world to know. Nora sat through hours of testimony. Expert witnesses, historians, oceanographers, everyone had an opinion. Everyone knew what should be done. Finally, the judge turned to her. Ms. Vance, you discovered this. You documented it. What do you think should happen? Nora stood. She'd prepared a speech. Something diplomatic, something that balanced justice with compassion. But when she opened her mouth, different words came out. I think we should tell the truth. All of it, not because it feels good, not because it's easy, but because 27 children died in the dark, believing no one would remember them. They deserve better than another century of silence. She looked at the families, at their angry faces, their ashamed faces. Your ancestors did something unforgivable, but you didn't. You can choose differently. You can choose memory over silence, truth over comfort. The judge nodded slowly. The site will be declared a historical monument, protected. A memorial will be built, and the Historical Society will publish a full account of what happened. Names included. Truth told, not everyone was happy. Some families walked out, swearing, threatening lawsuits. But others stayed, thanked her quietly. Some even apologized. For ancestors they'd never met, for crimes they hadn't committed, for silence they'd inherited without knowing. A month later, Nora returned to the ruins. The site was different now, marked with temporary fencing. Soon there would be a proper memorial, a plaque with 27 names, a sculpture of children looking out to sea. Something beautiful, something that honored instead of buried. June met her there, looking older, more tired, but peaceful. The lighthouse went out last night, June said. All on its own, lit up bright as day for about 10 minutes, then went dark. Hasn't worked since. Is that bad? No, I think it's good. I think it's done its job. Kept watch long enough? June smiled. I'm moving inland. My niece has a place in Reading. Time for someone else to watch this coast. What about the ruins? They'll be here. The sea will take them eventually, but slowly, naturally, the way it should have been. June pressed something into Nora's hand. A key. That's to the lighthouse. Historical Society's gonna turn it into a museum. About the tsunami. About what came after. They want someone to run it. Someone who understands. I can't stay here. I have a life. A job. Do you? Or do you have running? Places to go so you don't have to feel. June's eyes were kind. You found what you were looking for here. Not in the ruins. In yourself. Stay, remember, help others remember. That's real work. Nora looked at the key. At the ruins. At the sea that had taken and given back so much. I'll think about it. That's all I ask. June left. Walked up the cliff path one last time. Nora watched her go, then turned to the ruins. To the place where everything had changed. She pulled out the coral heart. It still hummed, faintly, a rhythm that matched the tide. A reminder that the sea keeps everything, remembers everything, and sometimes, when the time is right, gives back what we're ready to understand. On her desk later that night, Nora began to write. Not a scholarly paper, not a dry historical account. A story, the real story, with names and faces and truth. She wrote about Samuel and Lillian, about the survivors' pact, about children who died for being in the wrong place when the sea decided to sing. She wrote about Elias, about his choice, about redemption through sacrifice, and she wrote about her sister, about letting go, about understanding that some things aren't lost. They're just changed, transformed by water and time into something new. Outside her window, the sea breathed. In and out, constant, patient, unforgiving, and somewhere beneath those waves, in the deep places where light doesn't reach, voices sang. Not angry now, not desperate, just singing. The way they'd always wanted to. Free, remembered, finally at peace. Nora closed her laptop, picked up the coral heart, held it to her ear, and heard in its humming a message she finally understood. The sea doesn't take, it keeps. And sometimes, when we're brave enough to listen, it tells us the truth we've been too afraid to hear. That forgetting doesn't heal. Remembering does. That silence doesn't protect. Truth does. That the only way to honor the dead is to speak their names, to tell their stories, to bear witness to what was done to them and what they survived and what they became. She opened her laptop again, started a new page, and typed the words that would begin her memorial. Their names were Sarah, Thomas, Little Mary, and 24 others. Children who survived a tsunami only to be murdered by the people who should have protected them. This is their story, and it starts with a wave, Up next, we have two more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch and it will take you there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. It would mean a lot.